Today we're going to unpack one of those controversial texts for understanding modern political ideas. Jean Raspail's 1973 novel, The Camp of the Saints.
It's definitely a heavy one.
It is. So the scene Raspail sets is just viscerally provocative. He asks you to imagine this. This massive armada. It's carrying 1 million desperate, starving refugees, and they're sailing from the Ganges straight for the French Riviera.
Right. And the dilemma it forces is brutal.
Brutal is the word. Is it justifiable to defend your borders when, humanitarian ideals seem to demand you open them completely?
And the novel uses this very extreme scenario, some critics even call it a migration apocalypse, to stage a really profound clash.
The clash between what?
It's between our, deeply held Western commitments to universal compassion on one side.
Okay.
And this paralyzing fear of total social and cultural collapse on the other.
So our goal here for you listening is to really unpack the specific arguments this fictional story sets up and to understand why it's become such a touchstone for certain political movements today. So let's start with the French response in the novel. The book portrays the entire political and intellectual class as paralyzed.
Completely. They're depicted as being obsessed with what Raspail presents as these crippling ideas like anti-colonial guilt and universal compassion.
And this paralysis is central to the whole plot.
It's the absolute core. Raspail frames it as a fatal societal flaw. It's a weakness that just eats away at the collective will to survive.
Is there a specific example of that? Of the state just collapse?
Oh, yeah. The key moment is when the French president calls up the army to defend the coast, but then he tells the soldiers to just follow their own consciences.
And they just leave.
Mass desertion, almost immediately.
Yeah.
So the book very effectively, very deliberately scripts compassion itself as being purely self-destructive.
Okay, but then, if the focus is all on this collapse, does Raspail offer any kind of successful resistance? Or is the outcome just predetermined?
No, none at all. And that's the point of the script he's writing. The narrative's logic is that collapse is inevitable because the West has, in his view, lost its will to live.
So any attempt to defend itself just looks weak.
Or hypocritical, yeah. Within the world of the story, at least.
This is the line that really stood out to me, and it leads straight into contemporary politics. The book explicitly imagines Western white Christian civilization being completely overwhelmed.
Demographically and culturally overwhelmed, yes. By non-white migrants who, in the story, are shown as either unable or just unwilling to assimilate.
Which tracks almost perfectly with the modern Great Replacement conspiracy theory.
It's a very close match. For anyone unfamiliar, that's the idea that Western culture and identity are being deliberately dismantled through planned demographic change.
Specifically through non-white immigration.
Right. The novel basically provides the entire narrative blueprint for that specific ideological fear.
And we can't really talk about its influence without talking about the language itself, which is grotesque.
It is. The book doesn't just suggest a racial hierarchy, it's incredibly explicit about it. The descriptions of the refugees are, they're designed to be dehumanizing.
Right down to giving main characters these lurid, offensive nicknames like the Turd Eater.
Exactly. And because of that overt racism and some really lurid scenes of violence, organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center and many academics just call it what it is.
An explicitly racist text.
And a favorite racist fantasy. It's engineered to provoke the maximum amount of fear.
So what does this all mean for its real-world impact? I mean, it was marginal at first, right?
For a long time, yes, but it's become this key, almost foundational reference point. Commentators have documented how much it's admired among white supremacists, but also its circulation on the reading lists of some very high-profile political advisors.
In both Europe and the U.S.
That's right. Which makes it a crucial text frankly, for understanding media literacy. It's a case study in how fiction can stop being just a story.
And start feeding into real-world policy arguments.
And even radicalization. It gives extreme anti-immigrant politics a sort of mythic, dramatic justification.
So this is a book that you have to read with extreme caution. It should probably be paired with strong counter-arguments, but understanding its story is vital if you want to recognize some of the rhetoric you hear today.
It shows how these vivid, fear-based stories can harden into what people see as ideological truths.
Yeah.
At the same time, it does force us to confront some very complex ethical questions about borders, state duty, and our humanitarian commitments.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to explore on your own. How should we, as citizens or educators, respond when a work of fiction that's built on dramatizing fear and hatred starts to genuinely shape mainstream political speech and even policy.